Yo, what's up? It's your boy E.T. Welcome to another edition of M.A.S.S. Impact, the educational podcast. Now, look, the reason why I started this, I truly believe that education is the way to close the gap, the wealth gap, the digital divide gap, the opportunity gap. Look, the American dream gap. Can I be honest? Everybody's not experiencing the American dream in the way it's supposed to be experienced. So the reason why we started the M.A.S.S. Impact, the educational podcast, is to close that gap. Now look, M.A.S.S. is simple. It means motivate, actionable steps, which means what? We're going to give you strategies every week. So we're not just going to motivate you and inspire you, which is important, but we're going to give you actionable steps. And look, it's a support system, y'all. Thus M.A.S.S. It's your boy E.T. Now you know. Let's go.
Boom. Yo, what's up? It's your boy E.T. Hey, it's early. It's early. Man, we love y'all so much. We getting up early to do this. And why? Because our kids are so important. First of all, welcome to another edition of M.A.S.S. I like to say massive impact. And guys, you know, every week it's the same thing. You know, as educators, I mean, it's tough. Let's just be honest. It's tough. We're being asked to do something that we didn't even go to school for, right? like we're literally being asked, you know, to do things under, man, crazy circumstances. Just when I thought COVID was gone, you know, maybe it's not, you know what I'm saying? And so I was watching the news, formula shortage, you know, it's just so much going on, so many challenges. And as teachers, we're still asked to get up, you know, and go to academic war, you know, on behalf of our babies. So I just want to make sure that you guys understand, like, number one, we're here to give you that motivation, you know, you need that motivation, you know, in order to get going. Number two, you got to have action steps, like action. We can't win this war without a strategy, right? And then more importantly, we need a support system. I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, you know, I don't think that, okay, forgive me. I watched this movie a long time ago, Castaway. I was like, yo, I don't really know that we take advantage of relationships. You know, it's like we're fortunate to have a circle of influence and we got to take advantage. We got to be more intentional and deliberate about not just having people around us, but actually allowing them to support us, right? And so for a lot of us, we want to do it all by ourselves. You know, we want to do it alone. We don't like to ask for help. We don't like to bother people. I remember being that guy. It's like, I know I could call, but I don't know if I want to bother him. I don't know if I want to bother her. But we're at a place where you can't do this alone. You know, no teacher can do this by themselves. So again, man, it's your boy E.T. As you see, I got Katie with me. I got LaShanna with me. I got Sam with me. You never know who's zooming who. All right. So make sure you guys show up. As always, we're gonna throw it to Katie. Katie, what in the world are we talking about today?
Yeah, interesting, because you just touched on all the things happening in the world right now. And we're going to chat about 21st century skills today. What kind of life skills do we need to make sure we're incorporating in our classrooms and however you work in education space to prepare the kids for life, for careers, college, whatever the future holds for them. So 21st century life skills, what does that look like in our classrooms with instruction, assessment, and just practical ways to make sure that we're implementing those for our kids?
Yeah, like, guys, let me start off. Wow, this is such an important topic because I feel like when I look back at school, I know that my teachers were doing it, but I don't know if they brought the clarity in the classroom that I needed. But as we were walking through, especially math, you know, and problem solving, no way did I correlate the two of, as you're solving these math problems, it's actually teaching you how to solve problems. You know, like, nobody ever told me that. Like, my whole life, I always felt like school was compartmentalized. Like, school is school, and once I leave school, I'm going home. Like, they have absolutely nothing to do with each other. The only thing I remember, the correlation was homework. You know, that's the only thing I remember. It's like, you got to do your homework, right? Other than that, when I left school and went home, I never thought about the decisions I was making and the problems I had to solve, that I could use some of the same techniques that I was using in the classroom to do math that I could actually do in the real world. And so I would just say, when we talk about what skill sets are needed post-COVID, I keep saying that because that's my belief. That's my belief. Post-COVID is
Speak into
problem solving.
existence.
Yeah, prayerfully.
Problem solving. Why? Because there's so many problems right now. Like, there are so many challenges that we are facing. And, when I think about, the Buffalo incident, when I think about incidents like that, not only do you have to solve problems for yourself, you got to be prepared to worry about other people's problems, right? Like, the days of you just worrying about yourself is what they taught me when I drove, offensive and defensive driver. And so now when we talk about problem solving, you got offensive problems, defensive problems. I was just at the furniture store. Literally, the furniture store was 2 exits up from Laguna Woods, where the church shooting happened, right? And so the guy was like, yo, I was on my way to work, and all of a sudden, well, no, he said he was on his, I forgot where he said he was on his way. But the guy that literally helped us in the store was like, yo, E, I saw the police going to the exit, getting off the exit. And he was like, yo, I would hate to have to feel like I can't relax in church. He was like, yo, I hate to think that in church, I'm not safe in church, And so for me, there's so many problems that my daughter, finished school, whatever. But I'm sitting down talking to my daughter like, okay, we got to solve problems now. The degree is good. You got the degree, but now on a real basis, like, how do we solve problems? So for me, I just think in the 21st century, if we're going to be a blessing to our children, we have to merge school environment, real world environment, what we're doing in the classroom, how it relates to what you have to do in the world. And just like we want you to not only meet the standard, but if you can exceed the standard in the real world, we want you to have the type of success that's not like, we want you to have real success in the real world. We want you to be able to not be below standard. We don't want you just to meet the standard. In the real world, we want you to exceed the standard. So for my daughter, it's like, yo, I'm grateful you got your degree. Okay, you met the standard. You got a master's. You met the standard. Okay, but now what are you going to do in the world to exceed those expectations? So for me, that's it. Problem solving, becoming great problem solvers.
I think that's good. That's really good. I think in addition to that, and to the extent that it's possible, I think resiliency. I think our kids learn how to pivot. I'm not sure how you would teach that in a classroom, but like you said, E, like we had COVID, and the implications are still ongoing in our classrooms. We've got mass shootings.
Not one. Mass.
Multiple and so I think that when you talk about life skills, I think that being able to know how to take a hit and keep going, make the adjustments, like that's pivotal. That's everything. When you talk about success and those who actually make it to the top, and then you look at, okay, like what are some potential obstacles that could keep you from getting there? It's the inability to be able to adapt and adjust. And, what can that look like in a classroom setting? What are those teachable moments and actually making space to teach, like, okay, if you didn't make the grade that you thought you should have made, or, whatever the case may be, maybe, less focus or a change in the direction of the focus of how we do standardized testing to say, hey, like, let's actually have the conversation that A, you wanted was actually a C. What does that look like? And letting them know, like, it's okay, but just giving them those skills to be able to, to take those next steps towards their success.
Yeah, I think about the 8-year-old girl who was in Tops, the store in the African-American community in Buffalo. This 8-year-old hides in a cooler, you know what I'm saying, and is able to escape. So when you talk about resilient, one, you talk about problem solving, like, I don't know who she had a conversation with. I don't know what she's watched, but it put her in a position, not to just like, yo, you imagine 8, you could be paralyzed. like 8-year-old, like you could be paralyzed under those circumstances.
Yeah.
So whatever caused her to not, panic, but to problem solve, phenomenal. But to your point, LaShanna, how do you bounce back as an 8-year-old when you physically watched, people in your neighborhood, get shot and killed? Like that is when you talk traumatic experience, how do you do that? And so I agree with you when you say resiliency needs to be taught. And may we remind you guys of the definition. It's not just the ability to bounce back. It is the ability to bounce back quickly, right? That's critical because there are some people who bounce back, but it takes 5 years.
Yeah.
And so you wasted 5, not in a negative sense, but you wasted 5 years in terms of it was so traumatic and it took you so long to get over that 5 years of your life, was put on pause. So LaShanna, I agree with you. The teaching our children how to bounce back, but to do it as quickly as possible. Because you break your, you tear your MCL, your ACL. There's this quickest that you can fix that because it's a time frame. Like you can't do it in a week, but maybe 5 weeks, 6 weeks. But then there's also it could take you 4 months depending on who the person is. So I'd like to say resiliency, absolutely. Problem solving, resiliency, good. Sam, what's our third one?
Yeah, and obviously, like, just speaking about Buffalo, like it just, I feel the tension in my body just speaking about it and just sending so much love to the families and community there, and the teachers who showed up the next day and the school community that have continued to show up every day to try to figure out how to be a support system and process that trauma. Unfortunately, that is a part of, the 21st century right now is processing that trauma together. I think going back to what you were saying, E, about the 8-year-old, also, the reality is we have active shooter trainings in schools now. Like that's like a drill, that they do.
Yep.
And so as great as it was in that situation, it's just heartbreaking that has to be part of the learning time, right? In schools. And so just wanted to say that and just deep on my heart all week. I think to pivot a little bit, I would just say like technology. I wouldn't say technology was like always my strength, but the more and more that I figure it out and see students figure it out, the efficiency that comes behind it, right? Like we're in 4 different locations right now and we're having a conversation over the computer. And
Absolutely.
So I think it's really just like taking a look at technical skills and obviously, taking a look at what's most important. But I just remember even before the pandemic, trying to teach students, like high school students, how to attach an email or how to attach a document onto an email, right? And you think like, oh, that's something we do like this, and just thinking back about how efficient that is. And now I'm assuming that that's much easier for students now that they've had the pandemic and, different times. But I definitely think technology plays a huge role in efficiency, in innovation, and I think it's important to make sure that those skills are instilled in our 21st century learning.
Yeah, that's good.
Sure.
That's good.
I think critical thinking goes along with, the problem solving and the resilience, the grit that we want to bring out of our kids. But I know you say that a lot. It's the critical thinkers that we want to develop. And so, I'm always going to talk about reading, but truly the more that our kids read, the more critical thinkers they become. So we have to have students reading at every level and not just reading like whatever our lesson plan was for the day, but like engaged in their reading and doing critical thinking. And so I always am going to suggest, if we talk actionable, that you get things in the hands of students that is relevant for them to read and that they want to read. And we can always challenge them with rigor and all of the kinds of texts that maybe aren't their favorite, but we need them to read and think critically about. But to do that, we have to develop readers first. And when we develop readers, we develop critical thinkers. So we've got to think about more ways, think outside the box, get creative, get things in the hands of students that they want to read and will read, and make it relevant for them so that you can have really great critical thinking conversations. So
I was talking to Nikki the other day, and And so she was just like saying to me, Eric, LeBron James spent $1.5 million on his body, to become a better basketball player. So she was like, Eric, what would that look like, for those of us who are not necessarily athletes? She was like, yo, tangibly, what would that look like? 1.5 million. You know what I'm saying? Like, what would you suggest we do? And I said, well, one of the things that we need to do is critical think. I said, but here's the challenge. Sometimes when you use the word critical think, it has such an academic term to it that a lot of people shut down and like, oh, critical think is discourse, you know what I'm saying? Like academia. And so I said to her, let me break it down for you. Critical thinking is the ability to hear your inner voice. That's all it is. Like it's no deeper than that. And for most of our babies, it's difficult for them to make the type of decisions that we want them to make because they have so many other voices in their head. There's so much noise, on the internet, and it's weird because as strong as I'd like to believe my daughter is, when we talk, I'm like, yo, I can't believe you would even like, what? But she's in a world. And so it doesn't matter. Well, she's 24, I have to remember that, but to me, it's like, yo, don't you know? But she's like, Dad, I do, but I still live in a world, and how that world treats me or act towards me. And I'm thinking like, yo, why would you even respond? Like we live in a neighborhood where, just quite frankly, there's some people who speak, there's some people who don't speak. There's some people who, I got my next door neighbor's phenomenal, but they're Midwesters too. You know what I'm saying? They from the Midwest, so they kind of kick it. But I have some other neighbors that, are racist. I personally, like, I guess because I'm older and I critical think, like I'm not even concerned with what concerns you about me. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not even in that world anymore. Like I wouldn't go, what do my neighbors think about me? I didn't buy my home for my neighbors. And I don't necessarily need to have a relationship with my neighbors to enjoy my life, but she's 24, and so she's strong, but I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. You are concerned about what they're, and so for me, as I explained to my daughter, yo, you need to critically think and not just what you think I'm saying, like master's degree critical think, write a paper critical think. No, I mean, you need to hear your voice enough where you have the confidence you need to do whatever it is you want to do. And you're not listening to the voice of other people. That's what critical thinking is. Critical thinking is thinking for yourself. Like it is not using other people's opinions, other people's experiences, other people's wealth of knowledge for you to make a decision. It is literally you talking to yourself, and so critical thinking is you talking positive about yourself. Critical thinking, again, when Katie says read, it's reading things that are appealing to you, things that build you up. Okay. And so number two, when I think of critical thinking, I like to run, right? I like to run. I like to walk, right? And one of the things I've been taught is, Eric, you probably need to stretch if you're going to be doing 20,000 steps a day. You probably need to stretch. Like you need to prepare your body for. And so when we think about critical thinking, it's really only the stretching of the brain. It's the stretching of your mind. Like, don't make it deeper than what it is. You're actually stretching. But for most of us, we just want to start thinking. Like, we don't do no stretching. We just want to start thinking. You know what I'm saying? And so when you say stretching, Eric, what does that mean? Well, meditation, like sitting somewhere and just being by yourself and just hearing your thoughts. Like, what am I thinking? What are my thoughts? Number two, I think gratitude is a way to stretch, where you're just sitting there, just grateful for everything that's happening in your life. Stretching is also you thinking through your day. What does it mean to win the morning? What does it mean to win the afternoon? What does it mean to win the night? But I am literally, guys, and I want to just stay here for a minute on this critical thinking. I am amazed when I listen to adults, how much of their thoughts are not their thoughts. You know, it's amazing. It's like, wow, that's not your thought. You know what I'm saying? That's not your thought. LaShanna said something to me yesterday that I thought was deep. Another way to stretch is to stretch with other people who are critical thinkers, right? Number 4, stretch your mind. Like when I used to run track, we all stretched together. Like we all did our little, you know what I'm saying? You played basketball, Samantha, like you didn't do it by yourself. Like you guys stretched together, right? You had routines together. But LaShanna was saying that there are some things that she doesn't discuss with people because it's like she doesn't vote on certain things because she's like, it's not a vote. Like humans have gotten to the point where they vote on, you know, what somebody should do or shouldn't do. It's like, you're not a God. That's not even your business to be voting about that. So LaShanna was like, yo, I don't let somebody convince me that I need to vote on this. It's not my vote. Like, I don't have a say in that. I don't have a right in that. And even though you made me a United States citizen, I still don't have the right. And I was like, yo, LaShanna, that's fire. Because that's another staying out of other people's business. You know what I'm saying? Like that's another way to critically think is to stop thinking other people's thoughts. That's how you critical think. Like I'm not doing that. Like that's something that you decided you want to do. That's fine. But I'm not going to make that decision for somebody. And what does that help you do? Well, it helps me to really focus on what I'm supposed to be focusing on. So in Atlanta, we're going to talk about why the pandemic was what it was. Like, how did it hit us the way it hit us? But then I'm going to prepare people for post-pandemic or whatever's next.
Sure.
Because I feel like while we did a lot of, swab and, take this and take that, we didn't help people to critically think about a virus. We didn't really help people to critically think about it. So it's like, yeah, you can take all this stuff, but at the end of the day, it's your immune system. Like that's how it's like the way you fight a virus is not taking a whole bunch of drugs. That's not how you do it. Even if you take drugs, there's still other things you have to do. Like you just can't take drugs and still eat any kind of way. Like the drugs don't work when you're eating any kind of way. The drugs don't work if you're not exercising. Like you have to critical think, what is a virus? How does a virus get in your body? You know what I'm saying? It's a weak immune system. So how do you strengthen your immune system, right? And so I didn't hear a lot of that on TV. I didn't hear that kind of talk, and so for our babies, do me a favor. If there's a pandemic, you might want to pull off on the hot Cheetos for a minute. You know what I'm saying? You might want to let the hot Cheetos go. Why? Because the hot Cheetos are not building your immune system. Like you might want to go with some of the candy. You might want to let go of like playing video games for hours. That's not helping you. That's a sedentary lifestyle. That's not helping your immune system. You want to be outside. You want to walk. You want to get some fresh air. You want to get some vitamin D. So this is what I mean by critical think. And when you're not a critical thinker, you're letting other people tell you, hey, you should just do this, or you should just do that, or you should just do this. And we still lost 1 million people. We still lost 1 million people. So it's like, yo, if we critically think, we're not going to lose 1 million people if we critically think. But if we're thinking the thoughts of other people or doing what other people are telling us to do without us doing our own homework or research, it was not going. Yeah. So you heard it from us, guys. We problem solve, resiliency, right?
Yeah.
What we're saying, what did you say, Sam? Technology. And I think technology is phenomenal. Why? Because it is true education. As educators, we're trying to wean ourselves off of the students. That's the goal. The goal is not for them to be relying on us and they can't learn without us in the classroom. And I know you love your profession, but at the end of the day, teaching is not meant for a kid to rely on you for the rest of their life. It is actually meant for you to, kind of get them started and then wean them off. And then they have what I like to call the academic expertise to know how to do it on their own. And technology, I'm telling y'all, you can learn a language without ever connecting with another human, meaning physically. Like you could literally get on the internet and learn anything you want to learn. There's somebody that's teaching you. And then finally, the critical thinking piece, where again, we just wanted to break that down so it can make sense to you. And is teaching our babies how to hear their own voice. I'm just saying this as a pastor. People say to me all the time, it's so complicated. It's like, pastor, how do you hear from God? I was like, yo, just like you hear
Mhm.
from anybody else. Like if I heard Sam's voice, like I could be in the mall. If I heard Sam's voice, I would know it was her. Why? Because I've heard the voice enough to know what it is. It's not rocket science. I would know if somebody said, I've been around LaShanna so much that if you said, LaShanna said, I would go, if I'm thinking, sometimes people don't think.
Yeah, and
Right? You're
calm
just
enough
getting
to
caught up in the
listen.
moment. If I could think, and you said LaShanna said, I'd be like, LaShanna would never say that we should do a peaceful march. LaShanna would never say that. You know what I'm saying? LaShanna would never say, you know what I'm saying, that there should be no resistance. You can't make people look. LaShanna said, we're going to put on our gym shoes and we just go walk. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to say nothing. We just go walk. I'm like, nah, LaShanna didn't say that. You know what I'm saying? And again, it's because I know her voice. I've been around her enough. I know her. I know her critical thinking. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I know her critical thinking, right? So when people ask me, how do you hear from God? You got to spend enough time.
Yeah.
So how do you know you? You got to spend enough time with you to know you.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you got to do. You spend enough time with you and you can figure you out. And once you figure you out, you don't necessarily need other people. Doesn't mean you don't need people, but you don't need people to the level you need people when you don't critically think.
Yeah.
Good.
That's so powerful. I love the way that you're explaining critical thinking because it's empowering.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I've been working on it. I've been working it to simplify it.
It's like, oh, like I have the ability. It's really about me listening to my inner voice. And I feel like if you explain that to kids in the classroom that way, because I know you were talking about adults having resistance to the term critical thinking because they think of it as something academic. But even as a student, to hear like, hey, critical thinking really is just taking a minute and listening to your own thoughts and filtering, through all of that and then applying what you're hearing. That is powerful. Like that gives me a tool that, even as a student in the classroom, I can use. I can use it in academics. I can use it in my social interactions with my peers. I can use it, in my interactions with my teachers. So I think that is just an excellent way of saying, hey, like using these critical thinking skills is going to be a paramount tool in helping you to be able to get to the next level because it's something that's internal. You don't have to learn it. You don't have to acquire it. You just have to sit and listen.
Yeah, and teaching them and giving them space to do that, to listen also. So, yeah.
And you got to put this down in order to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
You feel me?
Oh, go ahead.
I was it.
Actionable way to do that, to like get them to listen, because they don't put that down very often, right? They're not used to listening to themselves. And we want to build kids that will think for themselves and not be those adults that you just referred to that we hear and we're like, did you really come up with that thought yourself though? So actionable way, I've done this with kindergartners and high schoolers. My high schoolers actually loved this, but give them an activity to do where they have to, the only thing they can say is describe their thinking while they're doing it. So I had them create foil creatures. I brought in like foil and had them, you have to make a creature out of the foil and it has to stand on 2 legs and it can't fall over. And they had partners. And the only thing, as they were building it, the only thing they could say was whatever they were thinking. So they couldn't talk to their partner, but they'd have to say what they were thinking. So I'm going to try to do this. And if I make the head bigger, maybe it'll make it stand up. And the partner had to write down whatever they were saying. So they couldn't talk to each other. So I'd have to remind them, they'd want to be like, what do you think if I did this? And I'd say, nope, you can't talk to each other. You're only saying your own thoughts out loud. And the partner was writing it down and they'd switch. And they had so much fun. And it was a simplified way to say, like, what you just did was you weren't talking to anybody else. You were just saying your own thoughts.
I love it.
Back on them on paper. It was very simple. And then you can put a text in front of them and say, all right, now we're going to read this. And your thoughts, you're going to write down. Don't tell somebody else about it. Don't write down what you think the teacher wants you to, but write down your own thoughts, what you are thinking as you read this text. And it can be a relevant text. It can be, a piece that is SAT practice or whatever it is, or a very simple, poem with a second grader, but writing down their own thoughts. But after you've done a simple activity like that first. So a way to make it really actionable, to teach them to do exactly what you were just describing. Yeah. So
that's deep. Yeah. They got to put this down though. They got to tell them to put this down.
I love that. Yes, that phone. I mean, oh my goodness. I'm so glad I didn't have that when I was growing up.
Oh, I know.
just I love that whole idea also of just like pause and listen to your own thoughts. So I love the way you articulated that as well. I think another part of like critical thinking is that collaboration and communication piece. And so I'm thinking of two things. One, I just heard a call the other day about a group that is going to more like collaborative tutoring as well, and not trying to individualize as much, and just the power of collaboration, when learning together and thinking. And not that you can't have your own thoughts, because you still do that in those situations, but you're able to learn from those thoughts of others, which help you to continue to apply and critical think in different situations. So I'm interested to see kind of the data that comes out around that. The second thing is an activity that I'm thinking about, just because I think communication is an important part of critical thinking. There's lots of different forms of communication, but I remember we used to do this activity even with kind of like a building a structure. And so it was a partner group. And so one person had to just be completely silent, and they just had to take the directions of the other person to put the structure together. And the other person was completely responsible for giving all of the instructions, very clear, specifically pick this color up and place it here. And that was such a fun activity for, first of all, for one person to realize like how they had to instruct in that way when it was just them giving the instructions, and for the other person to have to really like listen. And so I thought that was such a great communication activity and strategy as well, and good kind of warm up for the students.
That's awesome.
Yeah, love it. Again, I want to say this. One of the things you can do to get kids to critical think is to take this away, right? And maybe we don't take it away. Maybe we have times throughout the day that you don't have it.
Yep.
And I'm just being honest. I critical think, but my critical thinking is altered because I critical think and I carry this with me. So there are times when I critically think and my critical thinking is interrupted because I get a call, or I critically think, but I can't critically think to the level that I want because I know it's there. So I'm concentrating on, I hope nobody calls me, I hope I don't get interrupted, and so I'm not able to just concentrate totally on my thoughts. And so I think there needs to be a time, I know for me, and I want you guys to think about your critical thinking time. Like, what's that time? So for me, I fly a lot. And so that's my critical thinking time. That's the time where I don't watch TV on the plane. I don't really listen to music on the plane. I don't really read a book when I'm on the plane. I literally just sit there and just listen to my thoughts. Now, if I feel like, man, maybe a song is going to accentuate that process, I'll do it. But I try my hardest not to do it. But, I've been listening to this song, First Class. I don't really listen to music a lot, but I've been listening to the song because I kind of feel like that's where I'm trying to take people, to this whole concept. He's saying to this person, for real, I can fly you first class, up in the sky, right? And if you really listen to it, like he's spelling a word, and the word is glamorous, right? And he's talking about, a glamorous life, right? And so I've been listening to the song because at the end of the song, I think he says something like, you could do it too if you believe, and that really resonates with me. Like, yo, you could live this first class life if you believe it, but for many of us, again, we don't critically think. We don't want to admit it, but for a lot of us, our standard of living is the one that we've been taught that we're supposed to live. Like, that's the one we taught. That's what we saw our parents do. That's what the people like. I'll never forget when I was working at Michigan State University. I'll never forget. Now, I saw it as a kid. I don't know if I paid as much attention to it, but everybody on our block would get up at a certain time and everybody would drive to Ford. Everybody would drive to GM. Everybody would drive to Chrysler. When I started working at Michigan State, I remember me and CJ once, we got there a little bit late, and it was like, in a matter of 3 minutes, if you late, the whole parking structure is like, it's nowhere to park. You know what I'm saying? But if you get there maybe 7 minutes early, you can have whatever parking spot you want. And I was like, wow, see, it's so crazy that we've even been programmed to what time you get to work. So you got everybody coming to work at the exact same time. Like nobody's thinking 7:50. Everybody's thinking get there right at 8 o'clock. You know what I'm saying? It's the craziest thing. Everybody's getting there at 8 o'clock. Everybody's coming in with coffee. Everybody's coming in. That was the craziest thing, you know? And I said to CJ even then, I was like, yo, bro, we got to help people to critical think. Is there something wrong working in Michigan State? Absolutely not. But is there something wrong with working in Michigan State and you never thought about where you really wanted to work? But like you just grew up in Lansing. So it's like if you grew up in Lansing, like it's Michigan State. You know, but we walked away from Michigan State, and I believe we created something phenomenal because of Michigan State. But there are people who are still at Michigan State who probably learned a whole lot and could have taken that information and given it to the world. But it was like, nope, you know. And I remember telling my mom, you know, man, I'm working at Michigan State. And I remember my mom, you know, feeling like, man, he working at Michigan State. You know what I'm saying? I remember leaving. My mom like, you leaving Michigan State? I was like, yeah, I'm leaving. Like they prepared me. You know what I'm saying? Like they prepared me to go to the next level. But my mom was like, they prepared you. Like, no, 401k, and health insurance. You know what I'm saying? They got all kind of benefits. And I'm like, Mom, why would I my whole life be consumed with insurance? Or why my whole life I can get my own insurance? It's America. I can have a company just like Michigan State, have my own insurance. But it was like, yo, critical thinking only goes so far. And once you get here, stop it. And it's like, no, we can't teach that. And so as I'm listening to the song, I'm like, why is this a #1 hit? Because people really do want, not necessarily to fly first class, everybody not even flying like that, but this construct of the lifestyles of the rich and famous. Like I remember that when I was a kid, like that we didn't have these. So that was the only time we got to really go into the lives of the rich and famous. But it's like, no, critical think for yourself. How far could you go if you thought your thoughts and not just their thoughts of you, you know? And so, yeah, been phenomenal. Let's one quick round table. LaShanna, give us in the last, give us 60 seconds, like give us a takeaway, 60 seconds. What's the takeaway from today?
One big thing for me is just the thought of how social media puts you in a position where you aren't able to think your own thoughts. Like you're literally regurgitating the thoughts that you're reading and you're exposing yourself to. And so what I would love, big takeaway, regulating screen time with kids, like, you know, so that they have an opportunity to actually hear their thoughts and apply them to their own life situations. Like,
I love it.
Their own voices.
I love it. You guys are giving me, my old slides are being removed and new slides for Saturday. So thank you.
I love it. I'll jump in because I just want to build on that, LaShanna. Teachers, I want you to hear that you can do that too. You can regulate their screens, because so often teachers are like, well, they won't put their phone down or they won't get, you know, and that's like, it's our job to regulate their screens, and you can do it. And we could talk about this forever, but build relationships with the students first so they trust you and care about you and listen to what you're saying. And if you do that, you have good relationships with your kids, it should not be a problem for you to say, hey, when you walk in my door, set your phone on the, this spot, and I'll let you have it back for the last 5 minutes. And guess what? They will do it. They will listen to you if you have good relationships with your kids and you have those structures in place. So let's not have the excuse be that they won't put their phones down. Let's build it in for them and have great high expectations and believe that they will do it.
Yeah. I love it. Sam?
Yeah, I'm thinking about relevancy. So like, you're such a phenomenal educator and teacher, because you can make anything relevant to anyone, right?
Right.
Like I just think about when you were saying, like, I watch these movies and people are like, how come you can't just watch the movie? You have to have a lesson that connects to the relevancy of the current time and whatnot. So I think that's something that's on my mind in this 21st century. Teachers thinking about how to make your content relevant at all different levels in order to prepare our students for the 21st century, and really giving them that experience and equipping them with the skills, because they are engaged in it when it's relevant to them.
Love it. Listen to me. The goal is to educate, not control. That's the goal. The goal is to educate, not control. So some schools I go to, They let them keep their phones. Some schools I go to, they can't have their phones. Like, that's not the goal. The goal is not to keep or not to keep. You know what I'm saying? That's not the goal. The goal is to utilize properly.
Yeah.
Right? That's the goal. So we have to teach them how to utilize the tool for their advantage and not their disadvantage. All right, hey, it's been some massive impact today. If you take one of these gems and use it, next level, I'm taking it to the conference with me. Okay, so you're gonna hear this stuff again. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not that person. I hate when people preach or teach one time and it's like, we'll never. No, that stuff was great. We got to keep going over that, like that. So I'm gonna take this podcast and get it to as many different groups that I'm a part of, and like they need to hear this. And so, man, thank you guys. Thank each one of you. B, it's that time again where we go to Coach B's office. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. All right. Don't be afraid. It's your boy E.T. As you can see, LaShanna, Sam, and Katie, and we'll see you guys next week on Massive Impact. Make sure you go and have massive impact in your environment.
Yes.
That's right.
Awesome. Later.
Welcome back, everybody, to the office hours. We had a phenomenal episode today, and I can't wait to dive into it and really break down this topic with you. Now, what was that topic? Empowering and developing 21st century skills. So in this episode, E.T., Katie, Samantha, and special guest LaShanna broke down the importance of teaching our students those essential skills that are needed to be successful and thrive in life. But not just any skills, 21st century skills. It's so critical for us as educators to stay up to date with the times. We have to stay current because the demands that are being placed on our students today are not the same as they were 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. It's not the same environment, and we have to equip these kids differently in order to succeed in that environment. So we discussed a few things. We discussed the ability to problem solve, to assess critical thinking, to cultivate resilience, and utilize technological skills. Now let's break each one of those down one by one. So first of all, we had problem solving. Why is this so important? Because people are going to face problems in life. I wish we could shield those students. I wish that we could protect those kids more than we can. But the reality is they're going to face problems in life, whether it's at home, whether it's at their job that they have one day, maybe it's even in school. We have to equip them with the ability to problem solve. And we have to equip them with the ability to do that internally, on their own. Not that it's a wrong thing for them to reach out and get help from other people, but they need the ability to critically think through problem solving on their own. And that leads us right into our next one, critical thinking. How many times nowadays have we said, I wish this person would just think for themselves. I wish they could just form their own independent opinion of something without following the crowd. That's our job, to teach these kids how to do exactly that. We don't necessarily need to teach them what to think, but we do need to teach them how to think. And not just how to think critically. Number 3, cultivate resilience. What is resilience? Resilience is the art of bouncing back, and bouncing back quickly, and understanding that you are the only person who has the responsibility and the ability to pick yourself up and actually push through whatever obstacle that may be. Resilience is such a critical part of what we are teaching these kids. It's not just curriculum. It's not just subject matter. We have to teach these kids life skills, and that was a huge focus of the conversation today. Last but not least, technological skills. We just talked about life skills. What about tech skills? Because nowadays, in 2022, I don't know when you're watching this, but right now in 2022, tech skills, they are life skills. Everybody has a smartphone. Almost everybody has a laptop or a tablet or some sort of smart device that they can use to communicate with the rest of the world in this tech-enabled society that we live in. It is so critical that we empower the kids to understand not only how to use them, but how to use them responsibly and productively. So technological skills was a huge topic of today as well. And then there was this quote from E.T. that I want to read to you. It says, as educators, we are trying to wean students off the teachers, and that's the goal. Now that's really, really important. So what he's saying there is we don't want students to rely on us for everything. Now, will they rely on us for a little bit? Of course they will. But we don't want them to rely on us forever, and certainly not for everything. We need to teach, we need to model, we need to empower, and we need to use their academic experience to prepare them for the real world. And the real world does not have us there with them all the time. So we need to wean them off of our presence. We need to wean them off of our mentorship. I know that can be hard to hear sometimes because you're so passionate, because this is what you love to do. This is what you're called to do as an educator, is to pour into kids. But the highest version of pouring into somebody is pouring into them so much that they don't need you anymore. And that's the goal for us as educators. Really, really quick, as we close out the episode, I have a quick story for you that kind of relates to this whole concept of pouring into others. I was at this conference called Phenomenal Life. Again, you may have heard of it. It's this thing that some guy named E.T., the hip hop preacher, he does it in a foreign country every year. It's this huge conference. He brings people in, phenomenal speakers, et cetera, et cetera. And I was at this conference, and CJ, the president of Eric Thomas and Associates, came up to me, and he asked me to sit down. And I was immediately terrified. In my mind, I was having these flashbacks of every single mistake that I've made in the last 365 days. I was terrified of what he was going to say, because CJ doesn't really do that. E.T. is the relational guy. CJ, he doesn't really talk to people all like that. So he sits me down, and I'm so nervous. And he just said one simple thing. He said, "I want you to know that I just really appreciate everything that you're doing." And that was it. And he got up and he walked away. And what was funny to me about that was I was nervous about what he was going to say, if anything had been done wrong or if I'd made a mistake. But what I realized was that he had pulled me aside just to say thank you to me. Why? Because I was doing everything that I possibly could to add value to him and to add value to E.T. What that experience taught me was that you don't really have a lot to worry about as long as you are doing everything that you can to pour into other people. So I know you have these evaluations every school year, every semester. I know you have the evaluations, and I know there's things that are frustrating and things that make you nervous. But at the end of the day, if you make your main priority, your main focus, pouring everything that you can into these students, you'll never, ever go wrong. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Mass Impact, the Education Podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.